Welcome back, everyone, to our series on learning SQL and specifically using SQLite, whether it be the command line version or within Python itself. SQLite, if we can remember, lets us work with SQL databases where they're contained in a single file, and it's very similar to just straight up SQL. I mean, it really is just straight SQL, but working with a single file as your database. So we first want to kind of review what we did earlier in the last video. We created a table, we saw how to do that, and we saw how to insert rows into this table as well. We also saw how we could update specific data based on certain conditions, add columns, and then how we can kind of adjust the SQLite command line program so that we can view our table very nicely by adding headers onto it and turning on the column mode. Now, moving forward, what we're going to be doing specifically in this video is really looking at how we can select pieces of data and sort of deal with when we have duplicates and how we can only select or view data that's not the duplicates, and we'll see some of the nuances in that. And we're also going to see how we can pull data from CSVs or just other files into our database so that we don't have to type everything out manually. Let's say that you already have a database ready, which is going to be the case a lot of the time. So let's get into that. What we're going to do first is we want to turn on the CSV mode. And I should note here that we're going to be focusing a lot more on the SQLite 3 command line program, just because we already saw how the Python library lets us write just raw SQLite statements inside of it. And we'll dive back to the Python part a bit later on. But just know we're working in the command line. And to start your SQLite program, if you didn't see the last video, it's basically you're going to be in your terminal and you're just going to run SQLite 3 and then database, whatever your database is named, .db, where it's either going to connect to the existing one in your path or it's going to create a new one for you. So let's get rid of that quick. But once we're in the SQLite with our pre-existing database, we just have these, we just had the two patients that were identical as of now. And we have this other external CSV with data for us that we want to add on. And to add that, after we've turned on the CSV mode, we're going to use the .import followed by the name of the CSV that has our data, and then what table, our name of our table was smokers. So that's all we're doing there. And after we do that, what you're going to see here is, it kind of did it correctly, but just barely not. It included the column names that were in our CSV. So I don't know if I have a picture of our CSV file in here, but the CSV file, if you can imagine, it has the column names at the very top of the file, separated by commas, of course, and then below that, all the data. And what happened here was it moved the entire CSV into our database. Essentially just moved it all over. SQLite had no idea that the column names were part of it. So just to get rid of that, super simply, we're going to delete from, followed by the name of the table that we're deleting information from. And then we're going to set our conditional. So it's where patient underscore ID, that's this column name, equals patient underscore ID. It makes sense that the value in that column is going to be just the same name as the column name. But it's kind of cool and important to know, just for learning purposes, how we did not use those single quotes because that's a column name. Versus this is actually like a piece of data in the column. And if we recall back, this column takes in text data or numerical data, or I believe it was text or something like that. But Either way, what's in that data right now is text data. Really shouldn't be, but that's what it is. And that's why we have to put it in quotes, because it's text. And what that would do is it removes that column, and we can view our current table again by using the select star from smokers. And what this star is doing is basically that means everything that's in the smokers data. And we will see that we have all of that. We have our CSV data imported. Pretty cool. Now we can dive deeper into really selecting data and seeing how cool some of these conditionals are. So similar to what we just did, select star, select all from the smokers table. This is the name of the table. Where our conditional is about to follow our where statement. Age is greater than 40. And what you can see here is it's going to look at the entire table, and if their age is greater than 40, it's going to include them in what we select. And this right here is what was selected, and it will be shown to us. So you can see we can already kind of divvy up our data and how we look at it a bit. On top of that, we can add additional conditionals, such as and or statements. And here what we've done is added a and weight is greater than 77. So it's looking at all the data in our smokers table, but it's only going to select where it meets this conditional, basically where the rows or pieces of data, or patients you could call them, it's only going to select and show us the data if their age is greater than 40 and their weight is greater than 77. If we don't meet both those criteria, it's not going to show them. We can also use or. So that's kind of, it doesn't have to meet all the criteria. It just has to meet one of the criteria or the other criteria, or it could meet both. So as long as one of these is accepted as the conditional, it will show it. And you can see here that, of course, if we're going to use or and not and, we're going to have more data shown to us because it's less strict of a selection criteria. On top of that, we can also note how we don't have to select to show all of the columns, which was with the star. We can list out the column names just however we wanted to. I could have included one column, I could have included 5 columns, etc. I just included 3. So it's only going to show us the 3 columns from the smokers data set. And you can see here, it's doing that. And of course, we can add conditionals onto this too. So we're going to say where the patient ID is 1 for our conditional. And what we're going to get is just these duplicate data. You can see we accidentally added duplicate data. But this is what's going to appear because both of these meet the criteria that patient ID is 1. Now we're going to get into some kind of like cool stuff, how we can deal with these accidental duplicates. And later on in some later videos, we'll see how to not even allow duplicates to begin with. But right now we're acting like we have these duplicates. We have what we're given. We can select only the distinct data. So let's select distinct. So only the data where it's unique, like patient underscore ID, basically looking at the instances, and it's only going to be able to appear once. It's only going to show and select for us the distinct data. So you can almost think of, our select statements aren't necessarily selecting the data itself, but rather showing to us the values that exist, that are possible to exist. And we could also do that where we say select distinct quality of life from smokers. And this is doing the exact same thing we just did. Remember, our patient ID column as of now, it's not special. So if we do it on the quality of life column instead, it's going to do the same thing. It's only going to give us the unique values that come up for the quality of life column. You can see here, even though we have a couple 7s, we have 6, 9, etc. You can see it's only going to select what's distinct. And we can also add conditionals, of course, onto this as well, where we're going to say, let's say, where. It doesn't have to be capitalized. It's just more for reading case to capitalize your raw SQL like related statements. So our conditional is where the quality of life is greater than or equal to 8. And just as we would expect, it's going to only give us the distincts, and they have to be greater or equal to 8. And you can see that's working here, such as for our patient 8 and then patient 4. All right, let's do another conditional where, capitalize that again, where the weight is greater than 70. Now look, weight's not showing up here for what it's selecting for us. It's important to note here that we can still include conditionals that are not even going to be shown to us. What's going to be shown to us only is what we selected, which was the quality of life column. But the quality of life column and data in there that it shows is only going to be the ones where their weight for that quality of life or that is greater than 70. You can see here. And this is just showing us the quality of life where their weight is also greater than 70. And it's kind of unique to note that, and again, show that our patient ID column is not special in any means right now. Because we also have patient 6 that has a quality of life of 7 and weight greater than 70. And so it meets those conditions just like these two do as well. And we're only seeing 1 7 because we selected distinct data. You can see I just point that out here. It's really just by coincidence that that's happening, that they meet the criteria we wanted. And this gets into the importance of like why we would use this select distinct. You can think about if you are running a scientific experiment and there's a certain amount of outcomes that can occur. What if we wanted to see just the possible outcomes? We don't want a big list of like what happened. We just want to know what's possible or what was seen, such as we'll exemplify really nicely using if we were taking data. Imagine my friend is over there, he's gonna flip coins while I'm recording the data into my SQL. So let's go through this example. We create table. We saw this in the earlier video, and this table is going to be called coin flips. This table that we're creating it's going to exist in the same database as our smokers table did. It's just a different table in the database, kind of alongside smokers. Right now, not even related to smokers, just in the same database. And the columns for this coin flips table is going to be trial, which is like the number of flips that you're on, and that is going to be an integer for the data type. And then the result, whether it was heads or tails. So let's kind of go through that. Okay, we did our first flip. Let's record it into our SQL. It was heads, so we insert into the coin flips table that for trial 1, we got heads for the result. We flip it again. Okay, it's tails for trial 2. Flip it again. And we just keep flipping that table and entering it into our database until we have this final table. And we can see here that heads and tails appears many times, but the only possible outcomes are heads and tails. That's exactly what we're getting when we use select distinct. We're getting the possible outcomes that exist. And so when we do our select distinct on this table, it's just going to be heads and tails. That's the only types or classifications of results that exist in the first place. All right, this was a relatively quick video, but in some of the later videos and in the next video specifically, we're going to dive even deeper into selecting data and conditionals, such as talking about group by, halving, order by, limits, stuff like that. And even in later videos, we're going to explore basically everything you can do with SQL and SQLite, how we can start relating columns to each other, relating tables to each other, actually doing data analysis, forms for like a web, all that kind of stuff. So I hope you guys keep following along in the series, because it's gonna get good soon. We're gonna get out of this nitpicky stuff pretty quick.